Once again, I'm welcoming everyone who has joined early. We're going to start the webinar in about 3 minutes. Thank you. We're thrilled to have you all here this morning. Obviously, a very important topic. We're going to start the webinar in 2 minutes. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Qdabra's webinar. My name is Patrick Halstead, and I'm the Chief Project Manager and founder of Qdabra. Today, we're addressing a very important topic, which requires your attention, actually. Microsoft has been moving to Entra ID, their new Azure-based authentication protocol, and we have a lot of updates for you today. We're really happy to see so many people interested in this webinar. And we have a couple quick questions for you before we get started. Just want to get a little feel for where you're at. Has your organization heard about Entra ID? Have you been impacted by it yet? This is a quick survey here, just to get an idea. So it looks like we're getting some input here. Looks like about right now we're at 50 yes, 17 no, and 33 don't know. And now it's changing, so we less yes, 38%. So we'll close the poll. We'll go to the next one. So it looks like it's about a third each way. A little bit more have been impacted, a little bit more don't know. No is about a quarter. So the next poll is, well, what about you? Are you online only? Are you online and on-prem, like a hybrid situation? Or are you both? I'm sorry, that's hybrid. So online is online only, on-prem is on-prem only, both is hybrid, and then none of the above would be, you don't have SharePoint. And so let's see, it looks like everyone's online. That's great, because if you're on-prem only, which is saying there's about 13% of you, you don't care about this webinar so much. I mean, it's good to know, I'm glad you're here, but you may be not affected as much as online. But I'm glad that most of the people here are online. So we'll close this poll down as well. And let's see, Jimmy, I think you're sharing. Can you share your screen again? I think that we lost the video. Thanks. So yeah, so I want to thank Jimmy, our lead developer, for putting a lot of effort into this webinar this week. He has been working on this feature for you. Well, he's been working on this for a long time. We were first informed by Microsoft that they were moving off of a SharePoint App Store. I want to say it was last year, sometime. Was it a year ago, Jimmy? Was it a year ago? Or was it like 10 months ago? It was like,
I think, well, it was around November 2023, I think we originally announced.
Wow, more than a year ago. And so we did a webinar last summer, summer 2024 on this, right, Jimmy?
Yep, thereabouts.
Yeah. And this is a bit of an update, but it's also an update with urgency because they're moving up I think there's been some recent announcements that have moved up the end of life on this. Unlike some of their other products like InfoPath, they're being very aggressive about this. And it might be because they're having challenges. I mean, we've seen some challenges internally here. We can't even access invoices from my account because of Entra ID issues, and we have an open support ticket with Microsoft to deal with that. So who knows what's going on there, but I'd like to thank Jimmy again for being here. We've got a full court here to answer any questions you've got. I'm just gonna give the floor to Jimmy so you can talk about this, and then we'll answer your questions at the end. Jimmy?
Okay, well, thank you very much for that introduction. And thank you everyone for coming to see this webinar. So just to reiterate, today we're talking about this this change that Microsoft is sort of making, where basically the old app model for SharePoint apps is going away. At present, this is relevant to anyone who's using our Qdabra Forms product with SharePoint Online. And there's an upgrade process basically to switch from the old app model to the new one. And if you're on our one of our public cloud instances, it should be a very simple process. It's about less than 5 minutes to carry out. This also comes with a mechanism for enabling a couple of the less common features. I'll talk about that in more detail a little later in the presentation. And just sort of a related topic, you may have seen when you're using Forms, there's this pop-up that comes up sometimes. It has a fix it button. We've been seeing that a little more recently, so I'm going to talk about that as well. It's sort of
why is that related, Jimmy? Why is that related to this?
Because well, switching this pop-up is only relevant. It only appears when using that old app. So anyone who switches to this new model will never see that pop-up again if they haven't seen it. So.
Wow, I did not know that. Thank you.
And lastly, for anyone who has their own on-prem instance of Qdabra Forms that they're using with SharePoint Online, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the upgrade process is in that situation.
And that's specifically the hybrid scenario. So they've got online with an on-prem Forms viewer, but they're not completely on-prem, right?
Right. The SharePoint is online and the Forms viewer is on-prem.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay. So just to give a little more detail about what this is all about. So Qdabra Forms was originally based on the SharePoint add-in app model, which was the way to do things at the time. And that model was introduced in 2013, 12 years ago. Yeah, in November 2023, they announced that they're retiring that app model. So basically, after a little while, that app model is going to stop working entirely, at least on SharePoint Online. So there's a sort of a phased retirement of it. So after July 2024, you can't install add-ins from the SharePoint store. There's still a workaround for that, for instance, to use the app catalog. After November of last year, any SharePoint Online tenants created after that date can't use the add-ins at all. On May 1st, 2025, that's coming up very soon, which is sort of the reason for the urgency of this webinar. Certain add-ins are going to stop working. And they've communicated this to us. It's not entirely clear who's affected. To the best of our knowledge, our main Qdabra Forms instance that most of our customers are using, that will continue to work until the full retirement date. We also have a Europe instance. That one, we believe, the old SharePoint add-in model on the Europe instance will stop working on May 1st. So anyone who's using the Europe one will need to upgrade before that. What's not entirely clear to us is the relevance, how this affects people with their own on-premise copy of Qdabra Forms. So in the interest of caution, we are also advising that anyone in that boat also upgrade by May 1st. But
why is Europe special? Sorry, Jimmy, it's a random rude question here. Why is Europe special here?
Basically, the history of our cloud, our public instances, is that we published our main one to the SharePoint store, went through the whole Microsoft review process and got it published. We never did that with the Europe one because basically we figured having one in the store which is the one most people are using, that would be enough. So Europe, basically any add-ins, that haven't been published are affected by this based on the announcement. So my thinking is that likely would include any on-prem instances, but not 100% sure of that. But in general, our recommendation is that you do this upgrade as soon as possible, whichever kind of instance you're using, just so you're using everything well ahead of the retirement date.
And we're here to help support you in the process of that. We'll have a question and survey at the end. If you need help doing this, we can schedule these. We're enough ahead of the May 1st date. We don't expect you all to be affected by that, but certainly we're here to help schedule assistance with this transition. It should be quite simple for most of you. Sorry, Jimmy.
Yeah. And then the last date on this timeline is April 2nd of next year, when this old add-in model is going to stop working entirely. So just to clarify who's affected, if you're using SharePoint Online, this is relevant to you. If you're using SharePoint on premises, or if you're not using SharePoint at all, then this does not affect you. Okay, so just to sort of talk about how we are transitioning away from this old model. So the official guidance from Microsoft is to use Entra ID for any apps, including SharePoint integrated ones. Entra ID is their cloud-based identity platform. It basically provides login into their system and ways of accessing various resources that are Microsoft provided resources. Now our public instances, they basically support both models at the same time in order to allow people to transition over on their own timing. So if you were using Qdabra Forms prior to, about 6 months ago, you're probably still using that old add-in mode. You haven't switched to the Entra ID mode. And the next version of Qdabra Forms, which we're releasing very soon, is going to provide a way to switch over to the Entra ID mode, which is what I'm going to be demoing in this webinar. Okay, so if you are basically a very, very broad idea of the process, if you're using one of our public instances, there is a new authentication settings page on the main page that you can see if you're an admin. You'll just go into that page and it's fairly self-explanatory, the process involved. If you have an on-prem instance, there's documentation in the installer package that explains how to do it. And of course, we're happy to help you with the process as well.
When you say on-prem, you're talking about the hybrid, right?
If their forms viewer is on-premise, yeah.
Even though they're using online, right?
Yeah.
So that's hybrid, okay. And then for the first one, are you going to just show that or can you quickly share and show the actual image so they can get a visual?
Yeah, I'm going to show that now.
Slide. Sorry.
Okay, so here we are. We're on our Forms Viewer main page, which I imagine most of you are familiar with. And in this upcoming version, there's going to be a new link here for authentication settings. So you just come in here. Oh, one thing to note on this page, if you look down at your username, you can see after the username, it says SharePoint in parentheses. That indicates that you're still accessing it in the old SharePoint add-in mode. So we go here into authentication settings.
So Jimmy, is that a key thing to look for everyone right now? Can they do that right now on their sites?
Sure. Yeah, that feature is already out, and yeah, they can check that if they want.
Awesome. We have a question too. We'll get to the question in a second. Sorry, Jimmy, keep going.
Okay. So you come into this page, it gives you a brief explanation of what it's all about. It shows the tenant's current mode and your current mode for your user. It is possible if you're in the process of transitioning, it's possible for these to be different, but generally they will be the same. You just come in here and click this button. It gives you a little more explanation. Because the process can be slightly confusing and there are some things you need to bear in mind. We've decided to have you read through these and sort of check each one of them as you go. So it doesn't need to be done by a tenant admin. Anonymous forms will be disabled by default, but there is a way to enable them, which I'm going to show a little later as well. After clicking proceed, you'll probably be sent to an authentication page, a login page. Just log in with the current user account that you're using. If you're a tenant admin, it might prompt you to grant consent to the app. And then, so in order to minimize interruption to anybody using the forms, other users in your tenant will continue to use the old mode for the duration of their session, which is generally about 24 hours. If they, for whatever reason, they need to, you want them to try it out in the new mode, make sure everything's working. They can open an incognito browser, sort of log in that way. Okay, so now I've clicked all of these. I click proceed. And you saw it, you might have noticed it briefly sent me to the Microsoft online URL, and it sent me right back here. Okay, so I'm back. I got a little message here, sort of, giving a little more detail about what just happened. We can see down here, now my tenant is in Entra ID mode, and my current mode is also Entra ID. If I go back to main, we can now see down here, it says Entra ID. So that's pretty much the whole process for switching over. And again, for any of your users in your tenant that are actively using it, they won't see the mode switch immediately, but generally after about 24 hours, it should be.
Do they have to do that per site or per entire tenant?
It changes over the whole tenant.
Okay, even if they're on one site, they do it, right?
Yeah, basically it's a tenant-wide setting.
Okay.
We don't
then
want to make.
when do you recommend they do this? Like on Friday night when everyone's logging out, or do we need to worry about that 24-hour thing?
Yeah, I mean, generally the general guidance would be to do it at a time when usage is low, but we've taken steps to ensure that the interruption should be well, there shouldn't be any interruption. We've taken pains to ensure that. So if need be, you can do it pretty much any time. But if you want to be extra safe, then yeah, do it.
So sorry, taking pains. So I just want to clarify this here, Jim. Thanks for playing the ball here. But if they do it midweek, 24 hours, so existing users won't be affected, even though they won't be logging into Entra ID. I mean, there wouldn't be any change because they've all got, assuming Entra ID accounts, right? So they won't see anything, right? It's completely seamless to the end users. Is that right?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So we have a great question from Krishnan. Thank you, Krishnan, for this question. Krishnan's question is, what about performance? Are we going to see a lag? I'm just entering that word. He didn't say that, but are we going to see an issue, either performance improvement or lag, or not improvement, reduction in performance? It when we switch to Entra ID. And I responded to Krishnan already saying I don't believe we would see that. Asked him if he has any performance issues already, and he's saying no, he doesn't, but just worried about it. So Jimmy, can you comment on that?
Yeah, no, there shouldn't be any lag. I mean, basically the ways that it's calling SharePoint are basically the same regardless of which mode it is. It's just how it gets the authentication tokens for the user is different between the two modes, so it shouldn't affect performance. And I see there's another question from Christian. Yeah. Why do I recommend a tenant admin do it? So basically, this didn't show because I've already switched this our tenant back and forth a couple of times. But basically, when you switch to Entra ID mode, when somebody accesses Qdabra Forms for the first time, they will get a screen that asks them to consent to the use of the app. If you're doing this for your tenant, you'll encounter that screen. Now, if you are a tenant admin, you also get the option to consent on behalf of your whole organization. There's a little checkbox you can click. And what that does is it means that none of your users have to deal with that screen. So in order to minimize any confusion or surprise, I would recommend doing it as a tenant admin and checking that box. But if you don't, the only difference will be that each of your users will see it the first time they access the app in Entra ID mode. They can just confirm it and then go on their way.
That would be pretty surprising for those users, though, to see this because they're not expecting it, right? Jimmy, can you show this? Is there some way we can show them what that screen looks like from the tenant admin?
I don't think I have a way to show it.
I have a screenshot.
I can. Okay.
Hillary,
yeah, if anybody wants me to share real quick, I can do that, or I can just send you the screenshot, Jimmy. Which would you prefer?
Yeah, let's switch over to Hillary.
Okay, and okay, let me get everything else out of the way here. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the screen, and you can see that checkbox that I was referring to. If you're a tenant admin, you'll see that box. There.
Okay, so what you're saying, Jimmy, is that you recommend they do this as a tenant admin because that will reduce the confusion to their end users. And I'm not sure if that's a great answer for Christian. I mean, Christian, are you a tenant admin? Who knows? Maybe you're just a SharePoint admin. Maybe this requires extra privileges to do it from a tenant admin. But yeah, this is one of the problems here with switching to this is that either the users have to consent or the tenant admin has to consent on behalf of all the users. So that is definitely a bit of a hurdle here. Yeah, thanks for that question.
Very good.
Exposing this important issue. And okay, Jay.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, and I hadn't thought to mention that, but so I'm glad you asked about it. But yeah, that's basically the process for switching. Now, there's also these extra features, and what that means is there are a couple of features that we've had in Qdabra Forms up until now. That if you're in Entra ID mode, they do require the involvement of a tenant admin to enable these features. So basically, anonymous forms require the tenant approval because it's basically the app is allowed to perform actions without an actual user being logged in. So that requires a tenant to sort of sign off on that.
If you're using anonymous forms, sorry, just another quick poll here. Just raise your hand. I think there's a way to do this in the UI, but raise your hand if you're using anonymous forms. We'll get a quick view here of who's using anonymous. So we got, it looks like about, well, less than 20% of you, about 20% of you are using anonymous forms. Sorry, Jeremy, keep going.
Okay. And then the other feature that requires tenant approval is user profile queries. Now, this is a very rarely used feature. It's where a query from the actual user profile store with the get user profile by name command. Now, that command will work without doing this. And most people, I think, the default mode of this command doesn't actually query from the user profile store. It queries from the site users list. So most people are not going to need this feature. But in the event that you do, that also requires tenant approval because it's sort of querying. It allows the app to query from user profiles, which is sort of more protected.
So you say tenant approval. Isn't that just what we answered during Christian's question?
This is separate from that, and I'm going to give a demo of this.
Great.
Yeah. So enabling these features, it uses that same page that I just showed you. I'm going to show you this process as well right now. This is something you do after you've done the changeover to Entra ID mode. Okay, so let's have a look at that. Before I show you the process, let's just look at what it looks like before the features are enabled. So if I come in here to our familiar upload template page, we can see that the allow anonymous users checkbox is disabled because the feature is not enabled for this tenant. We provide this little question mark button, which will explain the situation in case you forget. It says that in Entra ID mode, an administrator needs to enable it using the authentication settings page. Likewise, oops, let me do that. Okay, so this is my get user profile by name form, and I haven't enabled that feature, but I am able to query my user details. But if I switch it over to this profile mode, which sort of allows you to query custom sort of user profile properties that aren't usually in the site users list, if I do that without enabling the feature, you can see I get this error down here that says I need to enable it. Okay, so let's look at that process. We come into this page again. And because there are, a couple of differences, we imagine there is a very slight possibility you could encounter an issue after switching over and need to switch back and sort of regroup. We do provide the ability to switch back to the old mode. We, of course, don't recommend.
Why would they have to switch back? Sorry, let's be clear. What are the possible issues that would force them to switch back?
Well, for example, if they switched over and realized, oh, they actually need to use anonymous forms, they don't have a tenant tenant admin available to enable them. They would need to switch back until they could figure that out. And just in the event of anything, any unforeseen situation where they encounter some sort of discrepancy, the option.
So we're testing it. We're thoroughly testing it, but if we miss something and there's something missing, then they can switch back, right?
Yeah, it's just, it's sort of the red button.
Gotcha.
The panic button. If in the extremely unlikely event that there's a problem.
That's great that you added that.
Yeah. So that's available. Of course, long term, you are going to need to use Entra ID, so you need to figure out any issues that you did encounter in the event that there were any.
By the way, thanks to Jimmy's thinking ahead of time. Sorry, Jimmy, interrupting again. But I'm just going to comment and compliment. Thanks to Jimmy thinking ahead here, this should give you a much easier convincing strategy here. Just do it, because you can always move back. It's not a leap into the unknown. You can always go back. Sorry.
Right. Yep. Okay, so to enable those other features, you come in here, and you can enable either one or both. I'm going to enable both. And again, because this is sort of a slightly confusing process, Microsoft page, we have you read through these instructions. Only a tenant admin can do this. After clicking proceed, you'll be sent to a consent page. We don't disabling features. In the event that you did disable them, just be aware that forms that use those features will have a problem. And similarly to the switching to Entra ID, enabling the user profile queries feature. This will only work for any new sessions that start after the feature is enabled. So if you need to get using this feature right away, people can start an incognito browser window. The reason for this is that basically when they access the app makes a call out to Entra ID. It says this user needs these permissions, and it grants them. But if this feature was not enabled when they had accessed it, then it wouldn't have those permissions for them. It wouldn't be able to query user profiles. So, and again, this is an extremely rare feature. I imagine probably all of the people here are not going to use this feature, but we want to be thorough. Okay, so click proceed, pick my account. And this time we do see a screen similar to the one Hillary showed, because it's asking the tenant admin, who's me in this case, to basically consent to giving the app these permissions to access stuff in your SharePoint site, read user profiles, and so on. So I click accept. And then it's done. Now I can come back here and I can see now this checkbox is available. Now I'll enable anonymous, open it anonymously. Also the user profiles. Query with this mode, and that works. I can query extra properties from the profile store. Okay. All right, so if you have an on-prem instance of Qdabra Forms, the process is a little different. So basically, the things you would do is you would upgrade to the latest version. There's a process to register the app as an Entra ID app in your Azure portal. We provide all of the steps for doing that. And then there's a small update to the web config. And that sort of bypasses that first process I showed, this changeover, because it's a sort of you're switching over by editing the web config. If you do need to enable either of those extra features, the process for doing that is the same. So once you've done this changeover to Entra ID, you access that page and enable those features. And of course, we understand. Sorry,
Jimmy. Yeah. So once again, this is for people who are using Qdabra Forms on-prem for their online instances, the hybrid scenario, right?
Yeah.
They're just using Qdabra Forms on-prem with SharePoint on-prem. They don't care, right?
Yes, none of this is relevant for SharePoint on-prem. And of course, we understand, this is somewhat involved process. We're always happy to meet with you and help walk you through it. So just contact us. Okay, so this is a sort of something that came up 2 weeks ago. Now, there's this pop-up that comes up sometimes when you're using a form. This happens basically when your form is enabled with this use client-side queries feature, which makes it such that the SharePoint queries go directly from the user's browser to SharePoint instead of going through the Forms Viewer server. Sometimes that communication with SharePoint, it fails for whatever reason. It can fail if the browser has cookies, what they call third-party cookies disabled. Those are needed in order for that SharePoint communication to work. So
that's the default on the iOS, right?
Yeah, a lot of browsers disable that by default. So anyone who has a browser with that setting is going to see this if this client-side queries option is enabled. So basically, there are 2 ways to fix this. The first is to upgrade to Entra ID because that client to SharePoint communication is something that was specific to the old SharePoint app model. In the new one, it's not relevant. So if you switch to Entra ID, you won't see this pop up. But let's say for whatever reason you're not ready to take the plunge, switch to Entra ID. There is another way to get rid of it right away. It's a little faster, a little simpler. Just
sounds like a mild bird bath and no longer a plunge, given what you just described.
Right. Yeah, I would say it's a bird bath. Okay. So
let's just ask everyone. So just a quick show of hands here, if you're still with us. Raise your hand if you've seen the fix it message before. Okay, Misty has. Misty's a power user. I've seen it, Misty, too. I saw it last week, actually. And I had a question for Jimmy. I'm not going to respond because it's regarding our forms internally. Sorry, Jimmy, keep going. Well, just one person out. So thanks, Misty, for raising your hand. At least you know somebody who's still with us.
In order to demo this, I'm going to switch back to SharePoint mode. So that's the same. That's the process. It's the same.
You're proving that you can actually do that. That's good, too.
Yeah, you can see it says SharePoint down here again. I'm back in SharePoint mode, which means now I have this checkbox. Yeah, so if you are seeing the fix it, for a long time we've recommended to have this checkbox unchecked, but you might have it checked because it was the default when you uploaded your form many years ago. It's still checked, so you can just uncheck that.
So why would I have seen this last week, Jimmy? Why would I have seen this for our forms internally?
Because we have a lot of forms that were uploaded before having this when having this off was the default.
Okay, so that was my issue. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep. So you just uncheck this, and you should be good to go. And of course, we always recommend when making either of these types of changes. Of course, we recommend making sure your forms work, test them, make sure everything looks good.
I mean, is that required, that checkbox required for any specific functionality or feature that, why do we even have that?
I mean, for the same reason that we have the button to transition back to SharePoint model, we wanted to consider the possibility that there are unexpected differences between implementations, because the client side mode was the original implementation. Then we introduced the server side mode, which is better, but we didn't want to take it upon ourselves to switch people over. We want to make the transitions as smooth and as put people in control of when they switch from one to the other.
Great example of how we've continued this. You've continued this wonderful migration pathway. Okay, so we're going to take questions, but before we do, Jimmy, what's the next slide? Are we done?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. So Hillary, any comments or questions to highlight or clarify or make it sound better?
No, this was great. I had honestly, I'd wanted to join because I had not been completely confident about where the newfound urgency was coming in, and now I know that it's because we're not certain about what's going to happen with the EU. I've actually, just so everybody attending the call knows, I've been doing some testing on this as Jimmy's been doing this work, and it is as simple as he demonstrated. He has made this as easy as possible. It's easy to switch back. I've done this on my test tenant and haven't had any issues whatsoever with making this switch. If you're using on-prem, let us know, please, so we can help you upgrade your on-prem instance as well. If you're using on-prem Forms Viewer, and if you're using our cloud version, it's just a few clicks from a tenant admin.
Thanks. And we're here to help schedule a quick call to walk you through it and be with you. Free, of course, no support hours needed. Chris, thanks, Chris, for this question. Is this done per site or for a site collection? I just responded per tenant. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's tenant wide. We didn't want to have people have to go through one site after another and do it. So yeah, you're basically switching over for your tenant.
Any other questions for us? We really you being here today. Of course, this is being recorded. We're going to upload this to our YouTube channel, and this is our first webinar this year. It's kind of embarrassing, actually. We've been very busy. Lots of really cool stuff coming. We hired 3 new people, and they're doing a great job. We're making a lot of progress on key deliverables for you, Forms Designer, Forms Viewer. We'll be launching a new Forms Viewer next week, Jimmy. Are you still on course for that?
Yeah, we have to make sure that the testing is on track, but I don't expect any issues. It seems very stable. So our plan is to have it out at the end of next week.
So can you just give Evan and the rest what's the current version and what's the new version number going to be, so they can know when it's updated?
Yep, the current version I believe is 9.3. The new one coming out is 10.1, and there's also a date at the bottom. It'll show a 2025 date. So
our versioning numbering system is, the major number is the year, and then the minor number is the within the year. Is that right?
Yeah, we increment major version each year.
Okay. So as soon as you see it go to 10, Evan, because we haven't done another 10 this year, you'll know that we made an update, and with the date involved, that should be definitive. Other questions for us? We have other webinars scheduled this year. We have a new training class coming in May. I just want to put a shout out. The training is going to be different than our training in the past. We're going to do an end-to-end training on building business solutions, building a solution from scratch. There's like 11 components: main data source, view, logic, submit, workflow. We're going to go end-to-end building a form from scratch. And this will be a very highly subscribed class, I believe, end of May. We're going to get the newsletter out probably next week on this, or next month, probably the beginning of next month on this. And we're really excited about this because what we're going to do is we're going to do this class with our current tech. And we have a lot of really cool acceleration like central flows and others that make this easy. We're currently internally debating whether we should have multiple tracks for people who don't want to use central flows or DBXL. We'll probably end up with a simplified one track. This is what you should do, and here's why. But then what we're going to do is we're going to improve the process. So we're going to get all your feedback from that first training class. And now it should be relatively simple. I mean, the training class is 3 hours a day, 4 days. It's 12 hours total. And with the labs, it actually is about 10 hours, if you think about it, because maximum 10 hours of lab work. Probably less than that too. So that's the total commit in terms of building an end-to-end solution. It only takes 10 hours, right? So we're going to show you how to do this for a real live web solution using Qdabra Forms. So using Qdabra Forms, building a real live web solution in 10 hours flat. Then what we're going to do is we're going to reduce it significantly from 10 hours to much less than that, 5 hours or less, hopefully. By the end of the year, we're going to do our training showing how to do this with the new AI tools to really make it easier to automate your business processes faster. So those are our focuses this year. If you've got feedback on that for us, I would love to hear it. Say, well, that sounds interesting, or I'm not interested in that at all. I would love to have you do something different in the training. This is a great opportunity for you to send me an email and say, hey, Patrick, I don't think that's the right approach. So we're listening to you. We're here for you. If you want us to schedule those upgrade to Entra ID meetings to walk you through it, please do. We've got plenty of time, and we'll make that happen. Jimmy, thanks so much for preparing this. It's been quite a long slog through this process with Microsoft, but you've done an amazing job of responding to it and elucidating it here. Any other comments, Hillary, before we sign off?
Yeah, thanks so much, Jimmy. I've just felt really like I went from I don't know about anybody else attending this meeting. I don't know if anybody else is high strung, but I went from like super freaked out, from the original announcement to now just being totally chill about it. So thank you so much for making this also
totally
manageable.
chill. You cannot be totally chill. Are you
When am
totally
I
chill?
ever totally chill? I know. Well, I mean, I'm not that chill. I wouldn't have attended the webinar, but I mean, I'm much more chill. I'm more chill.
Jimmy's chill. I'm not chill either. I'm like you, Hillary.
Yeah,
So,
we're high.
Jimmy's
Patrick and
chill.
I are high. We're wound up people, but Jimmy's chill, and we're all thankful for it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here. We're going to get this uploaded to YouTube later today, and look forward to hearing from you. Have a great day. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Thanks, Jimmy. Bye.
Bye-bye.